So my ethics presentation is on reforming nursing homes to prevent elder abuse and neglect. So throughout this presentation, I will be talking about first the background of what is elder abuse and why it is occurring, why this is problematic and what makes it an ethical issue, and then also I'll end with some of the ways that abuse can be prevented in nursing homes. So what is elder abuse? So abuse in general is defined as the willful infliction of injury or unreasonable confinement or cruel punishment that results in physical, emotion, or mental harm. And abuse can be physical, verbal, emotional or mental, sexual, financial, and can it be neglect. In elderly, although they can experience all of these, the two most common are emotional and neglect. Emotional abuse can be restricting or intimidating or even threatening to abandon the elderly, where neglect looks more like ignoring them or the staff not providing them proper care so the elderly don't get their proper nutrition or proper hygiene. And this abuse occurs more with the elderly because they are a vulnerable population, and they're especially in a tough spot because they're moving away from living independently in their own home and into a nursing home area. And according to WHO, 1 in 6 people over the age of 60 experience abuse every year, and this number has significantly increased due to COVID. So abuse occurs in the elderly more because they are vulnerable, like I mentioned. They're moving, they're changing responsibilities, and they're dealing with a lot of financial changes because nursing homes and these independent living areas are very expensive. The elderly living in nursing homes are also reliant on others to take care of them because they are unable to do tasks individually. And you can see from this diagram right here with the changing dates and the movement. So the elderly are quite large population due to these changing demographics, especially in the United States. During the 1900s, the demographic was more pyramidal shape, but you can see by this video that as it gets to the late 2000s, it's shifting to a greater population percentage of older peoples. This is also because families are having less children. So those who experience abuse can have several impacts, such as malnutrition, which are more likely to occur in long-term care facilities. As shown by this pie chart, the biggest chunks are in nursing homes, hospitals, and rehabilitation care centers where people are reliant on other people for their own care. Additional impacts include loss of trust, poor hygiene, and retreating to themselves, which all of these can lead to depression. So why is this occurring? So the main problem is with staffing. Current staff are either underpaid, which means that they are unmotivated to do their jobs because they feel like they're not paid enough, so why should they do the tasks that they should? There are not enough workers, and homes often hire unqualified workers or they don't have the proper training for workers, mainly because they don't have the time to give the proper training. Additionally, there is also poor supervision and management, so staff are not accountable for their own actions. And this graph kind of shows the turnover rate by the staff in nursing home, and most of these states represented by those darker blue colors have over 100% turnover rate. So even if staff are applying and getting these jobs, they're not likely to stay there, which is a problem for all this abuse and neglect. So there are current laws in place to try and protect the elderly, and there's 3 main ones that I'm going to talk about. So the first is the Social Security Act, which was established in 1935. So the goal of this act was to pay people over the age of 65, so when they stopped working, they would still be compensated and be able to live in their own homes. This law also sent money aside for each state to try to build retirement and elderly homes to protect them. The second one is the Nursing Home Reform Act. This was passed in 1987, and this was to set federal quality standards for nursing homes so that the elderly would be protected and get the proper care that they need. The last one is the Elder Justice Act. This was passed more recently in 2010, and this was to protect the elderly from abuse, neglect, and exploitation from the government and from these nursing homes. So, if all these laws are in place, why is abuse still occurring? And the main reason for this is because laws are recognizing these problems, but they're not offering preventative measures at that individual nursing home level, because it's hard to promote all of these laws at each nursing home when there's a bunch of them all over each state. Additionally, only 1 in 24 abuse cases are actually reported, leaving most of these cases unknown, so it's not an issue that is brought up to that surface of that governmental level. So why is this an ethical issue? So first, the definition of ethics is that through the different principles, ethics is based on morals and doing the right thing, which is based upon what society is considering morally right and wrong. So the four main principles that we talked about throughout this class is autonomy, which is the right for one to make their own choice and to be independent. Beneficence, which is the duty of the caretaker, the nurse, etc., to act in the patient's best interest to advance and maintain proper health. Non-maleficence, which is the idea for the caretaker to not act harmfully towards the patient. And then lastly, justice, being fair and providing the resources and cares to everybody. So abuse goes against basically all of these principles because the caretakers are not acting in the best interest of the patient and instead taking in their own interest as first. This is leaving residents without the proper care, so their health is going to decline. Like I said before, a lot of the staff's main priority is getting paid, so if they're not getting paid enough, they're not interested in protecting the health of the patients. Additionally, residents should all be getting equal care in nursing homes because they are paying for it, and abuse and neglect can be targeted, which goes against this justice principle as well. So all this also reflects on what we learned in week 6 with laws and morals. So laws are enforced by society and can result in punishment such as fines and jail time, where morals are more enforced by society and concerning the larger matters. And abuse in nursing homes is as much of a legal issue as it is a moral one. Several laws are in place to cover the quality of care that all individuals should receive, and these laws are in place because abuse is deemed morally wrong by society. Thus, individuals who believe they are being mistreated or witness this abuse can file lawsuits against it. So, when thinking about what should be done, it's important to explore all the different options and conditions that are laid out in that idea of framework that we learned about in class. So since we've already identified the problem and the facts of why this elder abuse is occurring, the next step is to determine the most justifiable action. So after looking at the idea framework, they have different conditions that we should try to follow when making or exploring the different options and making what act we want to choose. And the two that stood out to me, especially for elder abuse, is first empowerment, which is making sure that there is equal power and balance so that residents can feel as though they should have a voice and they can stand up and say what they want to. The other one is revision and appeal. So if you offer a way to act against elder abuse, that should be checked periodically, and if these methods are not working, then they should be changed so that abuse can be prevented. So using these conditions, some possible methods to prevent abuse, I have 3 listed here. So the first is external reviewers. So these are basically people that would come in and assess the patient's or resident's satisfaction. So this should be a contact person for the residents who doesn't already have a prior connection to the nursing home so that residents can feel safer bringing up these issues. This individual would then take each of these reports seriously, they would investigate it, and then this is a good idea because this could potentially increase the number of abuse reports, because like we saw before, only 1 in 24 are currently being reported, which is why this issue is still occurring in nursing homes. So if they had this outside person come in, more reports could be increased, which would bring this ethical issue to the surface. The next would be building relationships. So this is basically making more connections with staff and with residents to develop connections. And all this could just increase the conscious awareness of when abuse is occurring. So this could look like assigning like 1 or 2 CNAs per resident so that they see the same individual over and over again to try to develop that relationship. Also, just creating a more welcoming coworker environment so that the staff members want to come into work every day and they are being supported by this communal environment. The last is annual training on abuse and neglect. So having someone come in, give a presentation, giving demonstrations, giving different statistics on where and how much abuse is actually occurring. Because most of the staff currently, when they go through the initial training process, only have to watch like 1 video or read something on abuse when they initially get hired, and it's not continued throughout each year that they are there. So looking at all of these methods, what should we actually do? So the best step towards prevention is making more of a patient-centered environment. And this means basically anything that the staff does is in the best mindset for the resident to promote their well-being and health. And we would want to do this using a combination of options from the previous slide. So hiring that external individual to check in with the residents and then they would report the abuse if need be. Also, more training the staff on abuse and how to recognize abuse, because a lot of the staff may be neglecting the residents, but they might not be doing it intentionally or realize they are doing it. And then lastly is that community piece, to build connections between staff and building relationships, because it is more difficult to abuse someone in this type of setting when you have a relationship with them. So all of these methods on the previous slide are kind of at that larger scale level of what can happen in the future. But how can we change this as students and as individuals today? So the biggest barrier that allows abuse to occur is that most people are not realizing that it's still happening. So the biggest thing that we can do is just spread awareness. So June 15th is World Elder Abuse Day. So on this day, using social media to just spread facts, to spread statistics, and just awareness in general that this is still occurring. Also, for those who can, donating to the different funds, especially the World Abuse Awareness Day has their own fund that you can donate to, just to, again, spread awareness to prevent this elder abuse. And so to end, why is this important? Why should this matter to us? And there are many different lenses to try to explain this problem. So federally, basic thing is that abuse is illegal. There are many different laws in place to prevent it, so it should not be happening. Another one is through the ethical lens. So abuse is morally wrong, and it goes against those 4 different principles that we talked about. And the last kind of lens is looking at it through like a humanity lens. So the elderly are being targeted, and this is not right because they're still human beings that deserve the same rights that they had when they were those middle-aged class and when they were contributing to our community. They are still human beings, so they deserve those same 4 principles of ethics that everyone else gets. And overall, I think that there should be more awareness and prevention for elder abuse in the future.